the Holy Land, the land of the covenant, all those terms always refer to Israel. Go ahead. Which shall be his land, shall be consumed. Continue. Which shall, let me say this, which shall through his hand, which by his hand shall be consumed. Read it again from the top. What verse is that? Verse 16. Okay. But he that cometh against him, talking about the Seleucid king, Antiochus the Great, shall do according to his own will. And none shall stand before him. And he shall stand in the glorious land, which by his hand, which by his hand shall be consumed. Which by his hand, the glorious land, was consumed by the hand of Antiochus the Third. You can see that, Antiochus the Great. Okay, go ahead. Now listen to this. The Josephus tells you about that. It should say, read on down. What verse is that now? That was verse 16. Okay, all right, go ahead. Verse 17. He shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Now I'm going to show you, that's what I wanted to go to. It says he would, verse 16, read that again. Verse 16. But he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will. Okay, he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will. Go ahead. And none shall stand before him. Talking about the north. And he shall stand in the glorious land, which by his hand shall be consumed. Okay, so that's just talking about Antiochus the Great. He acknowledges this. That's what we're going to read. Antiochus the Great. Matter of fact, you got to go. I'm going to get it for you while you keep on reading. It's in Antiquities chapter 12. It's in Antiquities, book 12. I'll get it. I know what it is. It's in book 12, chapter 3, paragraph 3. No, what's reading wrong? Read that again, brother. Verse 16. But he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will. Go ahead. And none shall stand before him. Go ahead. And he shall stand in the glorious land, which by his hand shall be consumed. Which by his hand. Now, it's not talking about Antiochus the Great didn't put no hell on Israel. And during the time, neither did told them. It's talking about the warfare that took place. And I'm going to read this so you can stay there. It's talking about what the inhabitants and the land underwent with constant warfare. All right, because this was the 5th Syrian war. So imagine, from how many years? It's from 202 BC all the way to 195 BC. That's like what, 7 years? So for 7 years, the land is being ravaged by war. Now to show you something, I'm getting ready to read out of the book of Josephus. All right, with a little column there. I don't know if you got this already, right? Okay. Book 12, or it's in the realm of Antiquities, Josephus, Antiquities, book 12, so you guys can look this up. Book 12, chapter 3, paragraph 3. This is quite an extensive paragraph. How many minutes we got? Okay, I can do that in many minutes. So it says, the land will be ravaged by it, right? Yes. Which will by his hand be what? Shall be consumed. Now read on down. Verse 17. He shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom. In other words, he went from Syria through Israel, headed down into Egypt. Go ahead. And upright ones with him. And upright ones with him. When it said the upright ones, it's talking about, now I'm going to read this. Israel, they had a preference of Antiochus the Great above the Ptolemies, because from the time of Alexander the Great, they were receiving favors. From Alexander the Great all the way down to Seleucus, Nicator, all the way down to Antiochus II, all of them was giving Israel a relief. When I say relief, meaning they wasn't giving them, they were exempting them from the tribute that they was levying on every other nation. You know what I mean? They didn't have to pay as heavy tribute. They were allowed to keep their own laws, where the other nations were being Hellenized way before Israel. It wasn't until Antiochus Epiphanes that Israel came under that yoke. So I'm going to read it. This is, once again, Joseph, the complete works of Josephus, Antiquities, chapter 3, and paragraph 3. Now it happened that in the reign of Antiochus the Great, who ruled over all Asia, that the Jews, as well as the inhabitants of Syria, suffered greatly. Like you just said, you know, the land will be consumed by his hand. Surely, what was Israel? It was everybody's land all the different cultures and kingdoms that were between, that got caught up in that battle. And their land was sorely harassed. For while he was at war with Ptolemy Philopator, which is what I've been showing you, and with his son, in other words, Ptolemy Philopator's son was Ptolemy Epiphanes, Ptolemy V, whose surname was Epiphanes. It fell out that these nations, this is bad too. Hold up, I'm going to read it again. For while he was at war with Ptolemy Philopator, talking about from the top, now it happened that in the siege of Antiochus the Great, or in the reign of Antiochus the Great, who ruled over all Asia, that the Jews as well as the inhabitants of Seoul, Syria, suffered greatly, and their land was sorely harassed. For while he was at war, he being Antiochus the Great, was at war with Ptolemy Philopator, and with his son, who was called Epiphanes, it fell out that these nations were equal sufferers, both when he was beaten and when he beat the others. Because we just read, remember the first battle was fought. Let's read it. It says when he was beaten, I'm going to take this with me so I can say the right words. So when it says when he was beaten, I'm going to need my stick. When he was beaten, Antiochus the Great, it says, we was at war with Ptolemy Philopator and his son, whose surname was Epiphanes. You see it right there. It says, while he was beaten, in other words, because the fourth Syrian war, Antiochus lost. But then it says, and also when he was the victor, or as it put it, it says, both when he was beaten and when he beat the others. That's what it's talking about, so that you can see that. He actually was showing, he actually fought in the fourth Syrian war, Battle of Raphia, with Ptolemy Philopator, and then he went on to fight with his son, Ptolemy V, alright? And he lost this war, but he won the fifth. Okay? How many minutes we got? Okay. I'm going to continue to read. It says, so that they were very like to a ship in a storm, which is tossed by the waves on both sides. And just thus were they in their situations in the middle between Antiochus' prosperity and his change to adversity. But at length, when Antiochus had beaten Ptolemy, he seized upon Judea. We just got through reading. All right. You said he was going to the Holy Land, or the, what does it say? The glorious land. The glorious land. What verse is that?
Verse 16.
In verse 16, it refers to what we're reading now as him going into the glorious land. He seized upon Judea, and when Philopator was dead, his son sent out a great army under Scopus. There, in other words, this is Antiochus. I'm sorry. This is Ptolemy V Epiphanes had a general whose name was Scopus. This is you can find this in the Bible. This is the history book. How many minutes? Okay, let me know when this guy down there. You know, okay. The general of his forces against the inhabitants of Seoul, Syria, who took many of the cities, and in particular our nation. Remember, it says our nation. This is Josephus, an Israelite historian, telling us this. Which, when he fell upon them, went over him. Yet it was not long afterward when Antiochus overcame Scopus in a battle fought at the fountains of Jordan. This is where Ptolemy Epiphanes was taken, actually. You know, his general fell in battle. And destroyed a great part of his army. But afterward, when Antiochus subdued those cities of Seoul, Syria, which Scopus had gotten into his possession, and Samaria with them, the Jews of their own accord went over to him and received him into the city, Jerusalem, and gave him plentiful provisions to all his army and to his elephants, and readily assisted when he besieged the garrisons which was in the citadel of Jerusalem. We're going to go ahead and take a break and pick up from this point where we left off with take 2.